Let's get to the judicial reform. Ever since this judicial reform was proposed back in January, this country has been in a state of turmoil. You paused this legislation in order to allow for talks with the opposition because you were worried, like many people in the country, these sides fighting with each other could descend into a civil war. But those talks with the opposition now have broken down, and you say you may advance this legislation unilaterally. Are you not willing to return to the talks with the opposition at all? Will you just continue now to unilaterally pass this legislation?
Well, I definitely sought a broad consensus, possibly in a formal agreement with the opposition. But what we discovered after I pushed the pause button, after 1 month and 2 months and 3 months, that the opposition was under such political pressures that they couldn't agree to the most minimal understanding. They couldn't agree to things that we brought up by the opposition leaders before they went into opposition.
Can you be more specific, though? What will you change from the original proposal, from this measured proposal? What will be different?
Well, I already changed a few things right after the original proposal was put forward. I said that the idea of an override clause where the Parliament, the Knesset, can override the decisions of the Supreme Court with a simple majority, I threw that out, basically.
That's not coming back at all?
You're not following this. People don't know. They just don't follow.
Well, we thought it might come back with the supermajority.
No, I said it's out.
Okay.
And I think it's very clear that the way of choosing judges is not going to be it's not going to be the current structure, but it's not going to be the original structure.
Let's talk about Iran's relationship with Russia. Iran is now supplying Russia with drones that it uses in Ukraine, and Russia has a deal with Iran to supply it with fighter jets, combat helicopters. Russia is helping Iran advance its cyber capabilities, potentially its missile production facilities. How does this new relationship between Iran and Russia change the relationship between Israel and Russia?
Well, it's a very disturbing relationship, obviously, partnership, because it gives Iran the weapons or the means to advance its goals against Israel and others, against the Arab states and against many others. And it also, Iran is supplying Russia with weapons that are used in the war of Ukraine with deadly effect. So obviously we're concerned with that. We've made our concerns known to the Russians. We are also helping Ukraine. We're helping them in civilian defense, an civilian alert system that will obviate the need to get half the country in shelters for every missile fired. So we're helping them with that, but we're making our concerns to the Russian government.
What did Moscow say back? Can you share that with us?
Well, I think they're aware of our concerns, and I think it's important to understand that we're concerned also with the possibility that systems that we would give to Ukraine would fall into Iranian hands and could be reverse engineered, and we would find ourselves facing Israeli systems used against Israel. And by the way, that's not a theoretical threat, because Western systems, anti-tank systems, for example, did exactly that journey, and we now find them on our borders with Hezbollah. Mm-hmm. Remember, Israel is a country the size of New Jersey. It's been pelted with more than 20,000 rockets, okay, in a very densely populated country. We haven't had many casualties for one reason, because Iron Dome shoots down 95% of the missiles that enter could hit our populated centers. Now, if that system were to fall in the hands of Iran, then the millions of Israelis would be left defenseless and imperiled.
You're aware of what the Ukrainian ambassador to Israel said recently, that Israel says its stance is neutral about this conflict between Ukraine and Russia, but he said in reality it's pro-Russia. He said that Israel really hadn't delivered on its promises regarding aid to Ukraine. How do you respond to those assertions by the Ukrainian ambassador?
Well, that's not true. The former government made some promises which were in the process. Well, they weren't delivered, but I've delivered them. And I think people know. Maybe you should find out what's going on. But we're not neutral. We've expressed our sympathy and our position with Ukraine, but I'm saying there is limitations that we have and concerns and interests that we have. And my first interest, regardless of sympathy, and the steps that we take, is to ensure the security of the one and only Jewish state. And we have the concerns that I told you. We are also, our pilots are flying right next to Russian pilots over the skies of Syria, in order to block the attempts of Iran to establish a second Hezbollah front in Syria.
Is there any indication that the Iranians are trying to build a nuclear bomb itself, a nuclear warhead?
Well, there is more than indication, because I sent the Mossad to the heart of Tehran, and they brought back Iran's secret nuclear archive. And the opening document of that archive said that Iran's purpose 21 years ago, in 2003, was to build 5 kiloton bombs. That's 5 Hiroshima bombs. That's 21 years ago. So you can assume that they haven't abandoned this goal.
But is there evidence that they're reviving that project
Well,
today?
they certainly have revived that project in the sense that they're moving all the time with enrichment, as you said, which is a critical component of making a nuclear bomb. It's not the only component. There's also the weaponization group. There's also the missile group.
Can you tell us what's happening with the weaponization group?
I could, but I won't.
The U.S. is now re-engaging diplomatically with Iran, quote, a mini-deal around its nuclear program. Do you think this so-called mini-deal is the first stage in reviving the old Iran deal, or do you think the old Iran deal is really dead?
Any deal with Iran that doesn't set back their nuclear infrastructure, that doesn't basically take it apart, is not very useful. Khomeini just said, well, I'm willing to enter a deal, I just will not roll back any of the infrastructure. He said that about the mini deal. And he wants to get money. He's going to get billions. So I think that's a bad deal. Obviously, a deal which would give them hundreds of billions of dollars and would enable them within 2 years, 3 years, in what is called the sunset clause, to remove all limitations on nuclear enrichment is a far worse deal. So look, maximum deal or mini deal, neither is going to stop us from doing what we need to do to defend Israel against a regime that openly says it's out to destroy us and is seeking to achieve the means to do so. So we will do whatever is necessary to defend ourselves.
You've known President Biden now for over 4 decades, your friendly relationship, but since the establishment of your new government, you haven't received an invitation to the White House. Some of your senior ministers can't get meetings with the Biden administration as well. What does that say about the current nature of the relationship between Israel and the United States?
Well, you're quite right. I've known President Biden for over 40 years, and it's been a close friendship. We don't always agree. We often disagree. But it's instructive to say, I think he's a self-described Zionist, pro-Israel, and I don't think that's an inaccurate description. I think it's accurate. I think he has basic sympathy for the Jewish state, although, as in any family, we can disagree, and often do. But I have no doubt about his sentiment, and I trust that will continue. And I can also tell you that in the times of the Obama administration, when Mr. Biden was vice president, he often served as a channel to try to find, I would say, a middle ground during times of intense conflict. So the friendship is not a question. Now, here's what people don't know. I mean, this issue of the invitation clouds people's views and actually their knowledge of what is happening with our two governments. And in fact, the security cooperation, the military cooperation, and the intel cooperation, including cyber, is stronger than it's ever been under our two governments. I've spoken to the president a few weeks ago on the phone. Since then, I may not go to Washington, but Washington is coming here with a steady flow, including the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, and Secretary Blinken, and the chief of the CIA, all of whom I've met, of course, and the phone calls that are regular.
The last 15 months have been the most violent period in the West Bank in over 2 decades. The reason, according to Israeli officials, is because the Palestinian Authority has lost control over some areas. What is your solution for this? Is it, as some people say, some people in your government say, to put more Israeli security services in those areas, or is it to strengthen the Palestinian Authority there?
It's both, but they failed. The second has failed. I mean, they failed. They're stuck in their own convoluted politics, which is undergoing some convulsion. But I think you're quite right. I mean, northern Samaria has become sort of a no man's land at which you have more and more terror attacks that emanate from there. And my policy has been to definitely to keep the Palestinian Authority. I don't want it to dissolve the way people are talking. It's simply ridiculous.